Welcome to A Walk in the Park with Gil, where every other week I invite fascinating people to talk about cities. Sometimes it's about parks, others about walking, riding bicycles, using public transit, or children and elders in cities, public health, the environment, and much more. My name is Gil Penalosa, and I was born in Bogota, Colombia, where as commissioner, I led the design and construction of over 200 parks and took a small program of open streets called Ciclovia and turned it into the world's largest pop-up park with 121 kilometers, 76 miles of car-free streets where people of all ages and backgrounds enjoy the presence of each other as equals. 17 years ago, I created 880 Cities, a non-profit organization based in Toronto, Canada, where I live. Before the pandemic, I had worked in 345 cities in all continents, which is why my master classes now are called Gil in 345 Cities. This bi-weekly webinar is a way of giving back, always free. Invite anyone who cares about cities and people to join us. Your comments and suggestions are always welcome. Fred, welcome.
Hi, my friend.
It's such a pleasure. This one of the main reason why I decided to create this session is to share. I've been so fortunate to have worked in over 350 different cities and have made a lot of friends. Like I had the mayor of Tirana, Arion Beliav, and also Rob Adams from Melbourne and others. But with Fred, we've been working in different cities around the world for more than 25 years. In Chicago, in Krakow, in Poland. We've been in Mexico, in Buenos Aires, in many. And I have learned so much from Fred and Kathy and Ethan and everyone. Fred led the creation of Earth Day in New York. And then it became worldwide. And also he was the creator of PPS, Project for Public Places, and now Placemaking X and the Social Life Project. Fred, you're welcome. You have planted seeds all over the world. Many of them have germinated and are blooming and are transforming communities.
Well, we'd like to follow you. I mean, you're the superstar out there, and wherever I go, people will say, "Oh, do you know Gil Peñalosa?" Of course, I know him. he's the Don Quixote of placemaking, people spreading words like no one else really can. We've been trying to keep up with you, though.
Thank you, Fred. So the way we're going to do today, we're going to have the chat open. If anybody has comments and wants to provide links, sometimes we close the chat during presentations or the people communicate between each other. No, use the chat only to make comments on whatever you are listening or hearing, or to provide links to other things. So we're going to have a presentation by Fred on how are we going to build back but together. And we're going to hear about 11 transformative agendas. And then we're going to have a dialogue. If anybody has a question, please put it on the question chat, on the question area at the bottom. You have questions. And then we'll try to have Fred answer as many as possible. Fred, thank you very much. Now, please share your screen. Okay, now it's perfect. Thank you.
So this is very exciting because I think that we're actually on the cusp of a new world order. And we can begin to see it in small ways in a lot of different places. COVID brought us took us back home to where we live. It kept us in hiding. And as we started getting out, we realized we needed something more. We needed something bigger. We needed something more impactful. We needed to be outdoors more. We needed to participate with our friends. We began to respect much more the creativity of individuals and how each person is becoming much more responsible for their future. I think we were in the doldrums before, and then COVID kind of put us in jail. And coming out, I think it's really beginning to be a possible new world that we all want to be part of. So talking about global placemaking, the idea is, can we take lots of little actions and put them together into catalytic campaigns for transforming communities everywhere? Placemaking X and the Social Life Project are something that Kathy and Ethan and Josh and I founded 2 years ago. And this is one community we started to work on, which was absolutely devastated by COVID. It's in Washington, D.C. It's a whole bunch of shopping centers of which no one is there. Businesses all left. So it's been deserted and they've got to bring it back. So they're looking at placemaking as a strategy. So here are the organizations and the network that we've started. There are massive people around the world. It's really fun to watch it grow and to see what people are doing in their own way. A network is much better than a top-down organization because every place is different and they're sharing with other places. So we're all learning from each other. And these are the areas where there've been meetings and it's going on. It's really a phenomenal, locally led, locally proud people with a vision for their communities. It's going to change the world. And the mayor of Paris, has always been out there in front, and you can read this about places we share. That's what she's talking about in this quote. So our view for a long time has been, we need to turn everything upside down to get it right side up, to get from inadequate to extraordinary. What we had seen as we wandered around the world is that most new developments were defined by individual disciplines. Traffic engineers were doing the streets. Master planning were doing sort of these big ideas that people, when they were implemented, really couldn't use. There's so much out there of new disciplines that are really important, but are they working together to create the kind of places that we really want to be in? And it's very hard to turn things upside down to get right side up, to get from getting to extraordinary. But another thing that happened a few years ago is we had this quote that we had in our work. If architecture is frozen music and urban planning is composition, placemaking is improvisational street performance. So that's a challenge to every discipline, to every kind of top-down effort. And it starts to shift to thinking towards people who are placemaking and about improvisation. So if you turn that upside down and you start with community improvisation, planning becomes vision and architecture becomes happy music. So what we're doing is we're just realigning the professions to be much more about communities, community vision, about vision planning, and then how we deliver architecture, streets, and so on that help people to be happy and to sing a lot and dance. And the people that are doing this around the world, and most of these are placemakers, I think this guy, Gil Peñalosa, I think he's probably one of these. He's a visionary with a poorly developed sense of and no concept of the odds against it. He makes the impossible happen. And that's what we all can aspire to, because once you get that attitude, you begin to realize that there's so much that can happen, and the odds aren't so bad anymore. So the idea of creating these catalytic campaigns, having a vision, communicating it, looking for impediments, organizing a strong team, attacking complacency, doing lighter, quicker, cheaper activations, taking on bigger challenges, and then connecting change to the culture of the community. And one of the great opportunities we had was working in downtown Detroit with a guy by the name of Bob Gregory. And he was sort of like an impresario. He had worked as a stage set designer. So he totally understood the whole idea of improvisation. And in 1909, this is what downtown Detroit looked like. In 1999, it had become that, and this monument, it is in the same place. And then we worked with Detroit. We had a strategy for implementation, building a campaign, lighter, quicker, cheaper, creating energetic anchors of activity, crowdsourcing ideas, reaching out into the community and bringing other institutions into it. And the vision that was done, this is after about 10 years where there had been some initial improvements, but this vision was done in December of 2013. And this is the vision, and it was implemented in the summer of 2014 with a beach in the center of Detroit. And the whole place had been transformed in what is considered almost record time with lighter, quicker, cheaper activations, markets, games, a beach, water, and so on, and year-round activity. And it really became, once again, the heart of Detroit, where it had been at the turn of the century, in 1900, it had become that. And then this same attitude continued out from the campus marshes, which is in the middle, to some of the other public spaces. So in a sense, Detroit has turned itself around almost completely to become really a city of the future, defined by public spaces, because they could not rent any retail. They had to work on the public spaces to get people to come, and then the retail followed. So going back to Friendship Heights, and I won't show any other images of this, but this is a massive problem, and probably even bigger than Detroit, because there's really no there. And they've got to take these buildings and got to make them uses in the public spaces. So there are three sort of overarching big ideas to restore social and economic life in most communities. In this case, it's just Friendship Heights. The first one is the impacts of major intersections, narrow sidewalks, and overly wide streets has really become a major liability for small towns and big cities everywhere. The control that the traffic departments have over us and our lives is just phenomenal. And that's certainly the case back in Friendship Heights. So the real opportunity is to reclaim, remake, and reconstruct sidewalks as the focus for communities. So instead of thinking about traffic, think about sidewalks and social life and activating sidewalks. Then that pushes back on the traffic engineers and brings the citizen ownership right into focus. And it becomes the most important thing, and that's turning everything upside down. So then it works so that the professions can actually respond to the communities and their vision and aspirations. So the best sidewalk we found was up in the United States, was up in Saratoga Springs. It has a 4-lane road in it, but a wide sidewalk, and each building has its own special place. So it didn't have a landscape design with trees at 20 feet on center. It had little plazas in front of the buildings and beer gardens and major activities reaching right well into the street. The third focus is on making an existing public spaces multi-use, multi-purpose, and less passive. So the idea of having multi-use for every kind of public space and every kind of public building is really a deeply impactful agenda that we can have in every community. And one of the best examples is the Bryant Park in New York, behind the library, which has become probably one of the greatest park destinations, multi-use destinations anywhere. So the 11 transformative agendas, and we'll go through each one of them a little bit, but if you think about these agendas, what is really has to happen is these agendas cannot be implemented by professionals. They have to be implemented by local community people with the help of people who have professionals. But if you turn it the other way around and impose it on a community, they really are very difficult to make work. So we'll take each one of them. One is bring back the public square. This is in Pittsburgh, and you can see it's all about program.
Hello, Fred.
Yeah.
Yes. Before you go through the 11, can you explain a little bit that what you just said, because that is, I think, central to the placemaking concept. what that you said is the community, is not the professionals. What do you mean by professionals, and what do you mean by the community first and then the professionals? What by the community deciding the what and then the professionals the how? Can you elaborate and then go through the 11 agendas?
Yeah, sure. You know, what COVID did to us, it kind of forced every individual, every store owner, everyone in a community to realize that they were the ones that had to bring it back. It wasn't by legislation, it wasn't by a lot of money, it was by their own individual actions. So we've been watching how some major transformations have been emerging along the streets in some of the neighborhoods that we know. And it really got us realizing, wow, you can't do a streetscape plan. What does that do for you? But you can do an activation plan, and individual store owners and restaurants working together can create an environment on the sidewalks. They're absolutely amazing impact. And I'll show you one in just a second, but we're seeing these emerging hubs. It's not just putting a cafe out, but it's all the stores along a particular block, and how that block has now become incredibly active. And one of the key takeaways from that is that because you've got activities on the curb, children can come and they can free roam. The street is no longer right there in front of them. So that the kind of between the curb and the activity on the curb and the building, which also is active, you now get all kinds of things going on, like baby carriages coming and kids roaming and people standing in the middle of the sidewalk talking, and it's just become phenomenally impactful. And this is so thinking about the square, going back to the 11 ways, these squares are program driven. And this one is in London, and it was done by a fellow who came up with the idea of lighter, quicker, cheaper. And all these activations are temporary, although it's been there for 40 years. And it keeps changing as different people come in and come and go. So it's a dynamic environment and constantly reinventing itself because it's got so much to offer people. Probably, and then the whole idea of markets, which are probably the most important social way of connecting socially in any place of a city. These markets, this is the Borough Market in London, which I think is probably the best in the world. But take a look at the people in each of these pictures, how connected they are, connecting they are with other people. That's what's so special about markets. And just being around other people and feeling their presence and feeling comfortable in their presence is probably one of the most exciting activities that any one of us can participate in. And then when you start with the sidewalks, the key to creating the streets you want is what we can do. And sidewalks, you very seldom see a sidewalk like this. This is a wonderful, wonderful sidewalk. But the kind of activity that goes on along a sidewalk or at an intersection, I think, Gil, you might have been here in Buenos Aires with us, but this whole intersection has become a square because the curbs are not, there's no curbs, and people are just hanging out on the corners, slowing the traffic down and making it work. And then the other idea is, how do you take a high-speed road and turn it into a community road? Paris does a very good job of this, or another way to do this is this. Then
by the way, Fred, we have people here from all over the world. So we have people from Sweden, from Israel, from Kenya, from the US, Canada. So when you are showing this example from different places, this can really happen in any city anywhere, right? Wouldn't you say that? Yeah. Like people at the end of the day, human beings were very similar. So it's not like a copy paste, but we can learn from others some of the basics. What would you say when to the people connected? We got a couple of hundred people connected from multiple countries around the world. Is this something that has to be for a specific city or a specific country, or you see this happening around the world?
These are things that happen. We just have combed the world where we find these things, but they can happen anywhere. I mean, this is a building in Brisbane where they've just, the tower is above this and they've opened the whole base of the building. So you don't have to have just a sidewalk. You can actually go into the building and create that. So that's a kind of architecture of place that we can get away from these buildings that are just objects to buildings that generate all kinds of activity as a kind of place. And this is in Gdansk, Poland, where these older historic houses have porches. And people come out on the porch or they go into the basement. So sometimes there's 3 levels here that this street makes it one of the most active streets anywhere. And when you get these Paris commercial streets, they move all their items out onto the sidewalk. So people are attracted to it, and taking the inside out instead of having a building as a wall, these buildings are all come alive, and corners can come alive. But the one that I wanted, that you kind of in a sense alluded to, is this one in Brooklyn here. This is a building that was built in about 1902, and it has small storefronts. And this is what it was like up until 2 years ago, when people started to put cafes out, and they started to create little cubby holes where the storefronts were. They started cooking their food outside, and it became a traffic jam, and kids were there, and you can see the bottom picture there, kids are roaming free, and dogs come, and then the baby carriages, and there are 4 spaces on the Court Street here in Brooklyn where these blocks have emerged as major gathering places. It's changed the whole dynamic of the street, and the street is now slowed, the traffic is slowed down, fewer vehicles, and there's far more people walking than there were before. So it's one of the more transformative impacts that we've seen in any of the communities that we've been looking at. It happened right in our community. It's better than it was when it was an Italian neighborhood, because they're taking back and making the sidewalks the center of the activity. And we have one building like this, which is new, and that kills that whole block. It creates a big void as you walk up and down the streets in Cobble Hill.
Can you go back one slide, Fred? Yeah, I just wanna make an emphasis on how horrible they have street corners with banks. That's why in New York now they don't wanna allow in new buildings to have banks, because the banks are closed after 3 p.m. They are closed on Saturdays, on Sundays. They don't bring any life. So I love these images. The street corners are critical. I love how Fred showed the 4 corners in Buenos Aires, how when you got the 4 corners activated, it's a magnificent place. But instead having a bank there, all of a sudden the bank brings absolutely no life. The banks have no reason to be on the main street, because you're not buying anything from the bank from impulse. So the banks can easily be on the second floors of the buildings.
Yeah, or I think some banks are just all about online now, that you don't really have to go to them, and their small branches are closing. And then this is the public buildings, instead of being that have no life visible. This is the one in the Metropolitan Museum where they have a plaza out front. It's a fake facade. But, you can go to cities with the capital like this is in Paris. This is where all kinds of people come, not to have fun and to do things, to play games, or in Melbourne, or on the banks of the Seine, where the library in Paris comes out and does reading on the Seine. And then the idea of amenities is another key simple idea, that these bollards are actually one of the great social, they activate social life in ways where you can see a woman leading and the child with holding onto the ball. Well, there's a whole story about that. Or benches that have double loaded and can draw people of all kinds, or even passion. And then the high idea of water.
Can you go back to the previous photo, Fred? Fred, can you explain a little bit more talk about benches? What is the role of benches? Because I think benches are really, I think the most important infrastructure in any city are the sidewalks, but within the sidewalks, the benches. And I love this photo that Fred has, that one is in Paris. And that bench has like 5 different groups of people doing 5 different activities, and no one really cares what the others are doing.
Yeah, I know. It's really, when people are comfortable, it's that kind of thing. Now you see the picture on the lower right here. That bench is not a bench, it's a tree guard because it was illegal. But when they called it a tree guard, they allowed it to stay, and that became the signature bench in our neighborhood. And it's at a corner, and it's, to have a bench on the corner is a really big deal. So, and then the water, this is in Granville Island in Vancouver. It's one of the great water parks of the world. So water is a key part of it. And let me get back on this. And then let me get my pictures back there. So then the assets that express a city's character, these are things that people in a community can come up with to be able to have places where people feel they want to have their picture taken. I think you know these two people, Gil.
Yeah.
Cecilia and Kathy.
Magnificent, both of them, wonderful women.
Yeah.
And
So,
I think I love how you show these sculptures where people can touch. Sometimes you like look at those children playing on the sculptures, talking, sitting next to them. Please do not put public art in the public spaces with a sign, please do not touch. No, on the public space, children and everyone, they want to touch, they want to be part of it. Look at that little kid, he wants to be part of that paint. And the women, so public art in public places is to look and touch and feel and be part of it. You can go even a little bit slower on the images, Fred, so that people can get a sense, because everyone, and by the way, people, Fred has a new project that is called the Social Life Project, that every week they have a blog coming out with magnificent images. We'll tell you about the specific website where to sign, but a lot of these images keep coming, and also we will have a recording. Go on, Fred, please continue. Yeah. We are enjoying every one of your slides.
So I love this picture with these two women sitting next to Einstein, or this young kid sitting on Van Gogh's lap. Can you imagine anything better than that? So how do we create social life for all? And it's, when you get it, it just feels so good. You feel like you're whole. It's like it's your life. There's so much going on and so many people are doing different kinds of things of all ages, you kind of feel you're kind of in Noah's Ark of humanity. And it's that when you get to that, you kind of can relax. And even someone really old who has to get 2 canes walking down a street becomes someone you cherish. Or
we have doubled the life expectancy, Fred, in the last 150 years. Every single country in the world has doubled the life expectancy. And we should live our last third of their life older, healthier, and happier. These people clearly are older and they're happier. When you can see it and relax with your spouse, it's because you feel safe, you feel at ease. It's a wonderful public space. So we should also think of this, that it's a full third, and everybody should care about this, because these are your grandparents, your parents, or this is your future selves, if you are lucky. So everybody should make sure that older people have magnificent public places.
Yeah, and necking in public space is a great idea for people of all ages. And dancing. We see much more dancing recently than we've seen, and then people commenting or touching or hear the conversations. These are the kinds of things that are in places that are really comfortable to people to be in. These people on motorcycles would never go somewhere that was boring. They have to be where other people can see them. or people just hanging out on the intersections. We often wonder which cup of coffee they're on and their long conversation. So, and then the passeggiata, the whole idea of the paseo or the promenade in a small town in southern Italy. Everyone in the town, there's 6,000 people. I think they're all out walking on Sunday afternoon along the waterfront, meeting friends, and then making it fun. This, when you see people happy, you know this is the biggest indicator of a healthy place. And the kind of dancing we showed, performers and lovers. Where are lovers? They're in places that we always find lovers in this part of this particular park. There always seem to be there. It seems to be a magnet for that. And then, you know, just the idea what happens on the street in the neighborhood. This father is trying to get his daughter to play hockey. She wants a doll carriage. So, and then, you know, curiosity and excitement. So making it happen, and then we can close down on this. There are natural forums for community discussions, and they can happen let me get this up. The idea that schools, city halls, museums, historical associations, religious entities, post offices, banks can be places where people can talk about their future of their community, about how to create the kind of places that they can thrive in. And they can lead the future of those communities in ways that no professional could do through planning or master planning, but professionals can help support and help to make happen. So it's turning the professional community upside down to become really part of supporting the future led by communities. And just the last two slides, we've had this terrible, terrible killing of children in elementary schools. And the elementary school on the right is the one where in the last killings last week, where 21 kids died, but the school is isolated. The only other business there is a funeral home. And why not, like in our community here in Brooklyn, we have an elementary school, but the elementary school is full of life year round, daily, weekly. And the whole idea of place as a way of creating safety and security and reducing crime and all these things are in this post we did a long time ago. So, and then Holly White was our mentor. He said, I end in praise of small spaces. The multiplier effect is tremendous. It is not just the number of people using them, but the larger number who pass by and enjoy them, or even the larger number who feel better about a city center for knowledge of them. For cities, such places are priceless, whatever the cost, and they're built of a set of basics, and they're right in front of our noses. So Gil, what do you think? How do we?
Well, I wanted to ask you also, there are some issues. People are thinking about equity. How do you create placemaking so that it's equitable, so that people realize that it's not the white upper income people that create places, but that is actually about everybody. And actually in low income communities, when I work especially in emerging countries, in Latin America, in Africa, in some places of Asia, I see that the citizen engagement actually is inversely proportional to the social and income level. The upper classes don't even know the name of the person that lives next to them, while the people in extreme poverty, everybody's helping everybody. On Sunday, when someone is building a wall or is fixing the roof, the neighbor comes, everybody comes. So how do you make sure that placemaking is not just an elitist, but is for everybody?
Well, I think what happens is when you start getting into the position where you want to do a master plan for some community, you're now elevating that community to be at a higher level of income. But when you're doing community organizing around placemaking in any kind of a neighborhood, you're actually drawing more people to that of diverse nature, different ages. So place and placemaking is really the ultimate way to naturally bring people together of all kinds and naturally support different ethnic groups, different values, and so on in one place. Because people are naturally holistic about where they want to be, and they want to have a full life for the most part. So when you start getting too much into the professions, the traffic engineers are going to create it more for cars. Some of the designers are going to do it more as a design statement. So the best places are ones that are improvisationed by people in the community, and you can sense it right away. And they are the ones that seem to work the best in our experience.
Can you go back a little bit through some of the slides? And then, this school, I want to tell people 2 weeks from now, we're going to have a session with the people from Trust for Public Land. They have transformed hundreds, almost 1,000 school playgrounds that usually just on pavement where nothing happens into vibrant community hubs with the condition that the school will open it. It's incredible, but the overwhelming majority of boards of education in the US have the school areas closed after 4 p.m., Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. Instead of making the schools a community hub where there is life after school, on weekends, on holidays, during the summer, it is public. It is paid by the same people that pay parks. We really, Fred was talking about the link, and Fred, can you elaborate on that? How to make things, for example, I was working with Fred in Chicago in a church and in a library. How to make sure that all the open space around the library is part of the community. We need to make everything that is public link, interwoven, the library, the school, the street, the park, the faith places, the sidewalks. How do you make everything that is public connected, Fred? What is the link? Because people tend to compartmentalize. Oh no, this is the parks department. Oh no, this is the Board of Education. Oh no, this is the library. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, this is a perfect example. These are two schools where there were massive shootings, one in Connecticut and one down in Texas. They're one-off type buildings. They look like it looks like it could easily be a jail too. And so there isn't the kind of natural organic activity that can happen around these. But in our neighborhood in Brooklyn, and Trust for Public Land is involved in so many of these neighborhood elementary school playgrounds. You know, this is the town square. This is the square for our neighborhood. And that we have some parks, but this is the town square. And this is the graduation where one of our grandsons went and graduated from.
And people are concerned on gentrification. How do you avoid, they are asking specifically, how to avoid gentrification by doing placemaking activities? How is it that if you make a place nice, how can you avoid gentrification?
Well, we're in our neighborhood here, sure, it could be considered gentrification, but the things that have been done here could be done in a very low income community. They didn't cost a lot of money. They were done locally by local people to enhance so that's why we're showing the story, which we'll post very soon, about the emerging hubs, because they're just done by two businesses working together, and then four, and then six, and then the block. And you start getting outcomes that you couldn't possibly imagine happening without the getting out of jail that the regulations have put us in for so many years. So it's sort of like breaking out of jail, and then you can really do the kinds of things that we all are aspiring to, which is inclusive and equitable, because small businesses can get started in public spaces. So there is such an opportunity there to bring everyone together about that.
Fred, you were showing some images of the Luxembourg Gardens. What is it that you like about the Luxembourg Gardens?
They have seating.
Can you go back and show a little bit of those images? the seating is so incredible, it's so important, the seating, to have nice places to sit. That's why even bollards are really so fantastic.
Yeah.
That people sit on bollards, people sit on benches, people sit on
Yeah,
the
look at
stairs.
look at this bollard. That's critical for that person to be having a conversation.
Can you talk a little bit there about sidewalks? You were just showing there some sidewalks. Why are sidewalks so important? You know, in so many places, I've seen some cities in emerging countries, and I make emphasis on emerging countries because that's where a lot of the population growth in the next 20, 30 years will take place. And you see roads with 4, 6, 8 lanes for cars with no sidewalks. And then you say, what happened with the sidewalks? And they say, oh, we ran out of money. What do you mean? You had money to do 6 lanes for cars or 8 lanes for cars, and you didn't have money for sidewalks? So explain, not only in emerging countries, but in the US, in Canada, and Australia, what is the role of the sidewalk? Because it's so different that on the street, whether you're on a bicycle, a car, or public transit, you're going from point A to point B. But on the sidewalk is totally different. On the sidewalk, sometimes you're not going anywhere. Tell us, how do you perceive? What is your perception on the need? Because we need amazing parks like the ones that you showed, the Luxembourg Gardens, but we need spectacular sidewalks. And it's not an issue of money. So tell us about your perception. What is the role of the sidewalk, and how do you make it
all
great
happened
without money?
The family that owned this building are Syrian, and they have constantly been adding activity and doing small scale things just to improve their business. And then they bring in other people renting, and they're doing their thing. So you have, in one building, you have something like 8 storefronts, and each storefront has its own identity, its own energy. And the result is that this is now a double loaded sidewalk, and you get this amazing reaction, which is congestion on a 12-foot sidewalk, where people are happily there being themselves. And you can't go without seeing 4 or 5 baby carriages and these kids roaming around, and dogs. It's, that's so easy in a way. It's nothing complicated, but you wouldn't design this in. It's really programming.
Fred, you see, there's a lot of children on your photos, and it might sound incredible, but even a Toronto councillor that used to be even deputy mayor said, oh, children don't belong in downtowns. My God, I almost fell backwards. So why is it that actually seeing children in the downtowns is a symptom that is a downtown for everybody? So what is your take on children and downtowns?
Well, if you have children in baby carriages and dogs, and because dogs find other dogs, and people with dogs like to go where other dogs are, then they talk. And then children, when they're comfortable and being able to be free and not being strapped to your body or in a baby carriage, then they attract other kids. So it's sort of like this cycle of attractions, and you can kind of watch these hubs just become alive. And 3 blocks from this particular location is another emerging hub. And then, but then there's this block, and it kills it. There's no one on the block. And you're on a street that if this block had activity, people would continue to walk up, and it wouldn't be a wall to the next neighborhood. So this is like the neighborhood divide is this bank.
And in placemaking, Fred, when do you involve the community? Because you very often see planning firms and city planning departments that they involve the community once all of the designs are over. And then they have a public meeting and they show very technical designs. And then when they go to city council, they say, oh, did you go to the community? Yes, checked. So involving the community is kind of just a tokenism to get a check mark so that it will be approved by council. When is the best time to engage the community?
Well, you see, one of the things, let me go back to a picture up here. We feel that the way to bring about transformative change is by doing a vision where you do lighter, quicker, cheaper activation, create a vision. Where is that? That's up. Oh, yeah, here, you develop a vision, communicate the vision, look for the impediments, have a strong team, attack complacency, and then actually implement lighter, quicker, cheaper. And they're done by local people. And then you take on bigger challenges, and eventually you can get to some pretty big catalytic transformations, which may be redesigning a street so that it has less traffic. But the small stuff is what really works. It's program-driven, community-driven, place-driven, and inclusive, and owned by people in the community.
What do you call what lighter, quicker, cheaper?
It's something that you can do within a month, or the next week, or in 3 weeks, depending on the size. And that it's cheap because you're just experimenting.
What's an example?
Well, okay, I mean, almost all of these things here. Well, this is all lighter, quicker, cheaper. See, you can put out chairs like that. You can have your beer garden, and then you can. Anyway, you can see what goes on there. Those are all outdoor activities. You can bring your building and the food out onto the street. This is all lighter, quicker, cheaper. This can be an event on one day, 1 week, and a big concert or something else on another one. This is probably one of the best lighter, quicker, cheaper examples, because these are all very inexpensive storefronts that were brought in as garage structures, and then an artist just did the facades. And if you can see the bigger picture on the left, that's a painting of buildings. And this is all a blank wall where these little structures were all placed. See there, so that's above those structures on the right is a blank wall, and they just painted it. And these are the structures you can see on the lower level on the right, and they're just small, very cheap, and that's lighter, cheaper, quicker, and businesses are thriving there. And they're businesses that don't require a lot of rent, because it's raw space basically.
Yeah,
and a great incubator
the other
space.
wonderful thing about lighter, quicker, cheaper is that you should try it. It's low cost. So if it doesn't work, okay, you get rid of it and you try something else. So,
Right.
so don't be afraid of failure. You will never have all of the answers to every single question. No, try to plan whatever you can, but try it, put it out there. And Fred, how do you deal with elected officials when elected officials are terrified of doing this activation in the public space? How do you get the mayors and city councilors on board so that citizens, and what is the role of the citizen? Because we have spoken that this is not a time for citizens to be spectators. So two questions. How do you get elected officials on board? And two, what is the role of the citizens in 2022?
Well, the first thing I think you do is, because if you're working with the community and community organizing, you can do things around your storefront. You can put seating out, little things like that. But then then the bigger issues come along, and you can start a bigger discussion, like we've said about that, what goes on. And too far back maybe, but I'm going down anyway. Anyway, that's I can go back, but I don't think we need to do that. It's really just doing what you can with your business to make it have a better presence, and to create an experimental zone where things could be happening and new rules could be developed, and then you move forward, and then you go to the next step, and then the next step after that.
And Fred, why is this good, doing placemaking? Why is it good for mental and physical health?
Because people feel good, they get happy. That's what this whole uh, that's what this is all about. When you see people behaving like that with curiosity and joy and passion, and the street is crowded with people doing little things, kissing, artists, dancing, water, promenading, you've got something really good. Coffee, just all these scenes are things that people were just there. This is their place. This is where they
Something
live
that
their
is funny
life.
about this photo, Fred, is that when I've been in any of the 350 cities and take photos of benches, almost always is all men or all women.
Yes,
They
right.
don't like to mix too much. I don't know, maybe the men like to gossip on some topics and the women want to talk about other topics. But it's something funny. But look, this is the bench. People like to go and see the life go by in front of them. So like when they are gonna go for a coffee, it takes them 45 minutes because they gotta go and sit and watch and chat.
Yeah, I mean, it just this simple action of putting a bench out in front of a storefront creates all kinds of wonderful activity. It's so simple. It's not hard. It's not about getting permission. It's about doing something that just basically helps people to feel better. And then it gets bigger, and then it starts to take on its own life, and then it starts to change the whole community.
Okay, Fred, I could speak with you for hours and hours, but we're running out of time. I want to thank you very much. I want to invite everybody. In 2 weeks, we have the greening schoolyards. Do you have any last message, Fred, for people that are listening that want to transform, want to improve their communities? People are even more engaged now than ever after COVID, and meaningful actions feel a lot more worthwhile. So what is the role of the citizen, the people hearing? We have elected officials, we have citizens, advocates, organizations, and just anybody. So what as you see moving forward, after having gone through these 2 years of the pandemic, tell us the role of placemaking and moving forward, and leave us in a positive what would be your call to action? Oh, and yes, yeah, that website was very important. Yeah, the social.
Yeah.
So tell us about what would be your last message, like a call to action to everyone on this session?
Well, I always liked what Jan Gale said. Nothing is more simple and more cheap than making cities that provide better for people. It's not expensive, and if we think it costs too much, we're wrong. And then the other one would be, then the whole idea of complexity, mingles of different uses. Cities are not a form of chaos. On the contrary, they represent a complex and highly developed form of order. So complexity.
Fred, we had Jan Gale on the first session of this year in January, and anybody can go to the website gpenalosa.ca, and you click on a walk in the park with Gil, and you will find all of the sessions. Today's session will be there in 2 days from now. So please feel to share. So the call to action, Fred.
So never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that it ever has. So we're in charge. Us citizens are in charge, and we can create our future. And we shouldn't be afraid to do that.
Yeah, don't ever underestimate the power that each person has. Sometimes I go to public meetings and there are even more consultants and city staff than citizens. If a citizen had gone to the public meeting and had made a case, maybe they could have changed things. So participate, email the elected officials. And when you email, put 5, 6, 7 names on it, make phone calls, call up the radio stations. It's a time to participate. And from the point of view of placemaking, of creating places, don't be afraid of trying. Try it. If it doesn't work, okay. So lighter, quicker, cheaper. Do it. Then you twitch it. If it works, then multiply it. If it doesn't work, try something else. Fred, I want to thank you so much for everything that for having been here today, but also for all that you have done for decades. You have created people around the world, people that have gone to your workshops, that have seen you speak, are doing things everywhere in all continents. And we hope that you continue to be active and that you continue inspiring all of us and the world, because we really need a healthier, sustainable, equitable cities when all people can live older, healthier, and happier. So I truly appreciate all you've been doing, and I invite people to go to the sociallifeproject.org. That is one of the projects that Fred is leading now. And the weekly newsletter is magnificent, full of photos with a specific theme on everyone. Fred, thank you very, very much.
Yeah, Gil, and thank you. And we need to always work together, and maybe more than we are.
Excellent. Thanks. Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Thank you, everyone.